At the wedding venue, Damian's secretary replaced our photos with their pictures together. I became the laughingstock of the entire event. Damian, however, shielded her and said she was just joking. I had given him 3 chances, this was the last one. I smiled and said, "All right, the wedding is off." Chapter 1. Damian and I had known each other since middle school, 13 years in total. In the 7th year of our relationship, he finally proposed. On a romantic night, fireworks lit up the sky, so beautiful they felt dreamlike. Damian knelt on one knee, the fireworks casting a soft glow on his handsome face. "So Laura, can I be your family?" I burst into tears. I had waited 7 long years for this moment. So, I poured my heart into our wedding, taking half a month off work to personally oversee every detail, crafting the dream wedding I had always wanted. Yet on our wedding day, the big screen didn't display the video I had spent 3 nights editing. Instead, it showed one picture after another of him with his secretary, Camila, skiing on snowy mountains, surfing in the ocean, bungee jumping off cliffs. They conquered extreme sports together. Who wouldn't say they were a perfect match? I had no family and only a few friends. Most of the guests were Damian's relatives and friends. Someone in the crowd was the first to ask, "What's going on? That woman doesn't look like the bride." That single sentence was like a stone cast into a still pond, stirring up waves of chatter. Curious, gossipy, and mocking gazes all turned toward me. Standing in my wedding dress, I was frozen in front of the screen, searching for Damian. He was standing next to Camila, looking surprised. When our eyes met, he instinctively stepped in front of her. I was stunned. In that moment, something inside me quietly rotted away. I first met Damian in 8th grade. With his wealthy background, he should never have transferred to an ordinary middle school in a small, underdeveloped town. Once we got to know each other, he told me he had been sent there because he got into fights, and his family had dumped him with his grandmother, who refused to move to the big city. He listened to his grandmother the most. Before Damian transferred in, I had no friends. Because my name was Brosi, my family valued sons over daughters. My duty was to hope for a younger brother and, in the future, take care of him. In my first year of middle school, I once made plans to hang out with some classmates on a Saturday. My mom happened to see us on the street. She was furious. She stormed up and hit me, yelling at my classmate for leading me astray, saying I should be at home taking care of my younger brother instead of running around. My classmate cried from the scolding. The next day, the whole school knew about it, and no one wanted to be friends with me anymore. I sat alone in the corner of the classroom. Like mold growing in a damp corner, anyone who got too close risked being contaminated. So they all stayed away. Only Damian boldly threw his backpack onto my desk and said, "From now on, I'm sitting here, seatmate. Nice to meet you." Damian was fearless, afraid of nothing and no one. He carried himself as if he could hold up the sky if it ever fell. Before our high school entrance exams, I was miserable. I knew these were my last days in school. My parents had already decided that once I graduated, they would send me to work in a factory run by a family acquaintance to earn money for my brother's future house and wedding. Damian thought I was just stressed about the exams and kept trying to cheer me up. "Seatmate, you're ranked first in the whole grade. You're guaranteed a spot at the best high school in the city. What are you even worried about?" One day, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I cried as I told him that I wouldn't be allowed to continue my studies. He was silent for a long time. Then he patted my head and grinned. "As long as I'm here, I'll make sure you go to school." He begged his father for help and swore he would study seriously in high school in exchange for my right to continue studying. The price? He gave my parents $50,000. When I received my acceptance letter to the best high school in the city, I looked at him solemnly and said, "No matter what you do in the future, no matter how wrong it is, I will forgive you." Damian dismissed it with a laugh. "What are you saying? I treat you so well." He also returned to the city for high school, attending an international school next to mine, constantly coming over to see me. His friends often teased us. I blushed and lowered my head, not knowing what to say. One evening, while walking me back to my dorm, he suddenly asked, "What do you think about what they say?" I didn't get it at first. "What do you mean?" He suddenly got flustered, scratching his head like an anxious monkey. I'm so good to you, what do you think I mean? I murmured softly. I'm only good to you too. What? Embarrassed. I hurried a few steps ahead. We'll talk about it after we graduate. Damian quickly caught up, grinning like a fool, walking beside me with a spring in his step. You said it. No being good to anyone else. After the college entrance exams, we naturally became a couple. Even when he went abroad for university, he flew back to see me whenever he had time. 4 years later, he had saved up a thick stack of plane tickets. My college roommates used to say that we made them believe in love. After graduation, Damian returned home, and we lived like any ordinary couple. For 3 years, I was deeply immersed in happiness and love until Camila appeared. Chapter 02. Camila was the new secretary Damian had hired. The first time I knew about her was one night when Damian returned from a business dinner. He had drunk a bit too much and was leaning against her. Camila was beautiful. She had a doll-like face, big eyes, and a warm, pleasant appearance. She smiled brightly and greeted me. Hello, Solara. Damian had some drinks, so I brought him home. It had been a long time since Damian drank this much. I felt a deep ache in my heart and reached out to support him. With his eyes closed, Damian pushed my hand away. I froze, staring at my empty hand in midair. Camila leaned close to his ear and whispered, Damian, you're home. Only then did Damian lazily open his eyes, slump into my arms, and bury his face into my shoulder and neck, murmuring clingily, wife. The strange feeling that had just risen inside me suddenly dissipated. I turned to Camila and said, thank you for bringing him back. I'm Damian's secretary. This is my job. Camila smiled sheepishly. By the way, Miss Solara, I just started this job. The previous secretary left in a hurry, so I didn't get a chance to learn all of Damian's habits. Could I add you on WeChat? If there's anything I'm unsure about, I'd love to ask you. Please? She pressed her hands together, looking so sincere that it was impossible to refuse. I nodded and exchanged contact details with her. Afterward, I helped Damian clean up and changed him into his pajamas. The next morning, just as I finished making porridge, he woke up. He hugged me from behind and sighed. Wife, you're the best. Feeling shy, I gently pushed him away and asked about last night. Why did you drink so much? Damian sat down and replied calmly. Camila doesn't drink, so I had a few on her behalf. For a brief moment, my hand, holding the ladle, hesitated. A thought flashed in my mind. If she doesn't drink, then why bring her to a business dinner? In the end, I didn't ask. I had never interfered with his work. I trusted him and didn't want to question him over my fleeting jealousy. Camila messaged me a few times on WeChat. She asked about things like how much sugar Damian likes in his coffee and any dietary restrictions he had. All very normal questions. It made me feel guilty for my previous suspicion, so I answered her questions attentively, until something happened on my birthday that made me realize Damian treated Camila differently. That night, he came home early from work, while I was blowing out the candles. He sat across from me, seemingly distracted, glancing down at his phone from time to time. After I made my wish, I saw him frowning at his screen, as if he had encountered something urgent. I couldn't help but ask, Damian, what's wrong? With a screeching noise, Damian suddenly stood up. His chair scraped against the floor harshly. He didn't seem to notice. Grabbing his coat, he hurried toward the door. Solara, something came up at the office. I need to check on it. It must be serious for him to leave in such a hurry. Worried, I tugged at his sleeve and asked, what happened? Do you want me to come with you? No need. Without looking back, he pried my hand off and left, shutting the door firmly behind him. After he left, I sat in the living room, hesitating to message him too often, worried I might disturb him. The delicate cake slowly melted as the clock inched toward 11. He still hadn't replied to my messages. Was he really that busy? I opened WeChat, intending to ask Camila what had happened at the office. But accidentally, I tapped into her moments. At 9 p.m., she had posted, so unlucky. I totally wiped out while skiing. Attached was a photo of her lying in a hospital bed with a cast on her leg. 9 p.m., that was when Damian had rushed out of the house. My heart skipped a beat. My chest felt hollow. Something bad felt like it was about to happen. Just then, her moments updated. The new photo showed the edge of a man's black suit, a high-quality fabric that was instantly recognizable. A strong, slender wrist rested on the hospital bed, wearing a black watch, the same one Damian and I had as a matching set. Her caption read, "Told him he didn't have to stay, but he won't leave. Guess stubbornness doesn't change even after returning home." It felt like someone had hit me over the head. A dull ache spread through me, and confusion clouded my mind. Did they already know each other from abroad? Why hadn't Damian mentioned anything? I opened our chat, wanting to ask Camila, but accidentally sent her a nudge instead. She immediately sent me a message. "I'm so sorry. Miss Solara, I just found out today that it's your birthday. Are you all right being alone? Don't worry. I'll remind Damian to go back home right now." A few minutes later, she sent another message. "Miss Solara, he won't leave." Chapter 03. Damian didn't come home until the next morning. I had spent the entire night sitting in the living room. When he pushed open the door, he looked startled. "Why are you sitting here?" I lifted my head, my bloodshot eyes meeting his. "Where were you last night?" Damian walked over and crouched down in front of me. "Didn't I tell you? Something came up at work, so I went to the office." "Of course." I spoke softly. I added Camila on WeChat. His brow twitched, and the calm expression he had carefully maintained began to crumble. The next second, he sighed, raising his hands in surrender. In a half-joking tone, he tried to brush the matter off. "I'm sorry, babe. I lied to you. Camila and I were university classmates. She helped me a lot when I was abroad. Now her family is still overseas, and when she broke her leg last night, there was no one to take care of her. So I went to check on her." "Then why didn't you tell me?" He gave me a sheepish smile. "I didn't want you to overthink." He knew that keeping things from me would only make me overthink. "You hired her as your secretary because of her abilities, or because of your past connection?" I deliberately emphasized the last 4 words. "Of course, because of her abilities. I have no ulterior motives at all, babe. You have to believe me." He didn't realize that as he said this. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly, but I knew him too well. I knew all his little tells when he was feeling guilty. Damian had told me 3 times before, "As long as I'm here," and I had given him 3 chances. No matter what he did, I was willing to forgive him, so I chose to pretend I hadn't noticed his guilt, forcing myself to play the blind fool as I threw my arms around him. "Last night was my birthday. You promised to celebrate with me every year. From now on, you're not allowed to leave me alone again." A relieved smile appeared on Damian's face. "Understood." But he didn't keep that promise. Half a month later, he left me behind again. We lived in a spacious apartment in the city center, close to both our workplaces. When he first returned to the country, he insisted on driving me to and from work a few times, but we quickly realized it wasn't practical. The traffic was terrible. I preferred my electric scooter, 15 minutes, door to door. After what happened on my birthday, maybe out of guilt, he volunteered to pick me up from work. I didn't refuse. We were both carefully trying to mend the invisible rift between us. He lasted 2 weeks. That afternoon, he messaged me, saying he had a dinner meeting and wouldn't be able to pick me up. When I saw his message, I felt a strange sense of relief. Even though it was raining and I'd have to wear my raincoat and ride home, it was better than sitting in that narrow car with him, trapped in silent understanding. His attempt to make it up to me only made me feel worse. You only compensate someone when you've wronged them. I didn't need constant reminders that, when given a choice, he had once left me behind. That evening, as I was about to leave work, my boss suddenly called me over. He had transferred to our company a month ago. Unlike our previous supervisor, who was warm and humorous, he was quiet and composed. We had even secretly counted. He had smiled fewer than 10 times in a month. The happiest we had ever seen him was when the operations team finally switched our afternoon drinks from coffee to milk tea. Our company had no habit of working overtime, so I was worried he had brought over bad habits from his previous job. But instead, he asked, Has your boyfriend been picking you up from work lately? I didn't like discussing my personal life with colleagues, especially not with my direct superior. I politely replied, I don't think that has anything to do with my work. Gabriel nodded, then turned his phone screen toward me, showing me a photo. True, but coincidentally, I happen to be Damian's senior. I once went skiing with them. The image appeared so suddenly that it caught me off guard, and right in the center of the photo, two figures standing intimately close. They were wearing matching ski outfits. Damian was holding Camila in his arms. His face lit up with a bright, carefree smile, the same youthful confidence he had always carried when he was younger. No matter how I looked at it, they seemed like a sweet, loving couple. Then what was I? A joke? A wave of overwhelming sadness crashed over me, making it hard to breathe. My fingers clenched around the photo, my body trembling uncontrollably. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window, the sky was dark and heavy, pressing down like an unbearable weight. It was suffocating. So this was their past, the one I had never seen. And here I was, fooling myself, pretending to be deaf and blind, trying to ignore it all. Gabriel's gaze carried a hint of pity as he looked at me. They were close back in their second year of university. I'd always heard that Damian had a girlfriend back home. I never expected it to be you. My voice was hoarse. Why are you telling me this? He could have easily pretended not to know. I had seen it before, men who covered for their friends, forming an unspoken alliance, turning a blind eye to cheating. Why shouldn't I? His dark eyes, hidden behind his glasses, flashed with confusion. I warned Damian that this wasn't right. Seeing that I didn't respond, he seemed slightly frustrated, his brows furrowing. Should I not have told you? No. I appreciate it. Can you send me the photo? His fingers moved slightly, and the photo was forwarded to me. Without looking up, he added, Don't let this affect your work. Chapter 04. As I waited for Damian to return, I thought back over our 4 years of university, searching for any signs that he might have been emotionally distant. The answer was yes, but I had never considered it from that perspective before. I had trusted him wholeheartedly. When he first went abroad, he kept my class schedule with him and called me whenever he could. Even the smallest, most trivial things, he could turn into long conversations. At some point, though, we started talking less and less. When he finally returned home to me, we sat face to face, struggling to find enough words to fill even an hour. At the time, I was anxious. I wondered if the stark differences in our experiences had created an irreversible gap between us. Could we really keep going like this? I voiced my concerns to him, and Damian reassured me. He said that just being able to sit quietly together was the greatest happiness. But sometimes, when I woke up in the middle of the night, I'd catch him staring at his phone, laughing to himself. There was even one time when a shooting occurred at his university. I was in my morning class when I saw the breaking news on my phone. Panicked, I slipped out the back of the lecture hall and ran to the hallway to call him. It was around 9 p.m. over there, but he didn't pick up. Had something happened to him? The terrifying images my mind conjured left me curled up in the corner, crying as I called him over and over again. At the same time, I frantically searched for information on how to apply for an emergency visa. An hour later, he finally answered. His voice groggy. He said he had been sleeping. He hadn't been in danger at all. He just didn't want me to worry. So he chose not to tell me. After we hung up, I felt strangely empty. In the past, if he so much as burned his hand while cooking, he'd call me and ramble about it for half an hour. When did I stop being the person he shared everything with? And back then, I hadn't even thought to question, was there someone else in the background of that call? The sound of running water hinting at something more? Damian came home past midnight. Our eyes met, and for a split second, he hesitated, his body instinctively wanting to step back. That movement stung more than anything. He must have realized how unnatural it was, because he quickly pressed his lips together and tried to act casual. Why are you still up so late? Who did you take to the dinner meeting tonight? Damian's expression darkened. You're overthinking again. Am I overthinking, or are you just feeling guilty? I placed a printed photo on the table, His brows shot up. He snatched the picture immediately. Where did you get this? I wanted to laugh, but I couldn't. Instead, I murmured, does that really matter? His first instinct was to question me, not to explain himself. Damian rubbed the back of his neck. It's just a group photo. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? If I had taken a photo like this in university, hugging another guy, what would you have? Before I could finish my sentence, he cut me off sharply, his face turning stormy. That's impossible. His chest rose and fell violently. Just the mere suggestion was enough to enrage him. The double standard was staggering. You'd hate it if I did something like that. So why did you? Or, were you actually dating her back then? Damian's frustration boiled over. What kind of nonsense is that? It's just a photo. Are you seriously making this an issue? The day before, there was a shooting on campus. We were all under a lot of stress. She was the one who comforted me. She dragged me out to go skiing. There were a lot of people in the photo. I just happened to stand next to her. If you were stressed, you could have talked to me. He didn't even hesitate. What's the point? Would you have come to see me? You were always busy with your studies, busy with work, busy making money. Where did I even rank in your life? Would you have even cared if I told you? I stared at him in shock, unable to believe those words had come from him. I thought he knew. I was doing everything for us, for our future. I wasn't like him. I had no safety net, no backup plan. I couldn't afford to stop moving forward. I was always the first to arrive at the library and the last to leave. My free time was consumed by part-time jobs. I needed to pay back the 500,000 yuan his father had lent mine, so I could stand beside him with my head held high. Last year, when I finally handed that money over to him, he had accepted it. I thought he understood. I was reclaiming my dignity. Damian saw the tears in my eyes and froze, a deep remorse settling onto his face. I'm sorry. I pushed away the hand he reached out. It felt like something was crushing my chest, making it impossible to breathe. The silence in the living room grew suffocating. Then Damian's phone rang. He hesitated, glanced at me, then stepped away to answer it. I heard Camila's voice over the receiver. My leg hurts so much. Damian's shoulders stiffened for a split second. Then I heard his reply. Wait for me. He couldn't leave. Clutching my chest, I whispered, Damian, I don't feel well. If he turned around, if he just looked at me for a second, he would have seen how pale I was. But he didn't. He didn't even take an umbrella. He just slammed the door behind him. We both need to cool off. As soon as the door shut, I collapsed onto the floor. Darkness flickered at the edges of my vision. A suffocating fear gripped me, an intense, overwhelming instinct for survival. I couldn't die. I had fought so hard to escape the mud of my past, to earn my degree, to find a career I loved. I couldn't die here. I crawled toward my phone and dialed 120, my voice trembling as I gasped out my address. When the operator confirmed that help was on the way, tears streamed down my face. I lay there, barely holding on, and called Damian. Pick up, please, pick up. Didn't you promise you'd never leave me behind? I was terrified of being alone in the hospital. One call, then another, and another. He never answered. Eventually, I stopped trying. Chapter 05. In my final year of high school, years of malnutrition and academic stress finally took their toll. I fainted during the flag-raising ceremony. My mother came to the hospital, took one look at me, and scolded. The laundry at home has been piling up for days. Stop pretending to be dead just to slack off. When she heard she had to pay for my treatment, she slipped away while the doctor wasn't looking. Damian paid for everything, while cursing under his breath. He placed that day's test papers on my hospital bed. I'm here. You don't have to worry about anything. Not to be an asshole, but your parents are absolute scum. Sick as hell. And you still made me bring your test papers? What are you, running on pure adrenaline? Why are you always pushing yourself so hard? Eat up. My housekeeper made chicken soup. It's super nutritious. If you don't finish it, I swear I'll flip out. He brought me 3 meals a day, practically treating the hospital like his second home. By the time I was discharged, I had gained 5 pounds. Damian looked satisfied, pinching my cheek. Didn't waste all those late nights studying pig raising guides. Moved by his care, I made a promise. Damian, if you ever end up in the hospital, I'll bring you food every day too. He scoffed. Don't jinx me. I wanted to repay him. So when his father pressured him to take the IELTS, I helped him study. That March, we took the test together. I scored an 8. He got a 7, surpassing his dad's expectations. Overjoyed, he picked me up and spun me in circles. You're my lucky charm, my genius. Being lifted off the ground startled me, and I clung to him for dear life. Damian blushed and stilled, then hesitantly tightened his hold around me. We stood under that tree, embracing for 5 whole minutes. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us needed to. The memories were vivid, achingly beautiful. A single tear slipped from my eye, and something cool brushed it away. I opened my eyes. I was in the hospital. Damian's eyes were red-rimmed. I'm sorry, Solara. I didn't know you were really feeling unwell. I stared at him blankly. I told you. I said I wasn't feeling well. His tears fell instantly, and he kept repeating, I'm sorry. The doctor explained that I had collapsed due to severe emotional distress. For the next week, Damian stayed at the hospital, moving his work into my room. I didn't acknowledge him, neither welcoming nor rejecting his presence. He didn't seem to mind, eagerly playing the devoted boyfriend. Even the nurses whispered to me, your boyfriend really loves you. The day before I was discharged, Damian suddenly shoved aside his mountain of documents, grumbling, ugh, I'm so sick of work. In that moment, I heard an echo of the past, Damian throwing his test papers aside and whining, Solara, I don't want to do practice tests anymore. Something in my heart wavered. Before I could stop myself, I called his name. Damian. He rushed to my bedside, eyes lighting up. You're talking to me. He hugged me tightly, his voice trembling with remorse. I was such an idiot. I should never have kept things from you. Camila and I really are just friends. I don't love her. I only love you. I already fired her. I promise I won't have anything to do with her ever again. I never should have doubted your love for me. How could I not know? You've always loved me the most. Can you forgive me? He was crying now. The way he loved me didn't seem fake. But could a person love 2 people at the same time? When he held her like in that photo, had he truly felt nothing? I let him cling to me, then whispered into his ear. That was the 2nd time. He stiffened. What 2nd time? Nothing. I said, okay. Damian cupped my face, his eyes shimmering with fragile hope. Solara, I just want to be with you. No one else matters. The day after I was discharged, he proposed. I said yes. Yet as I accepted the ring, alongside happiness, I also felt an odd curiosity. Was he proposing out of love? Or was it just guilt? When Camila showed up at our wedding, I finally got my answer. It was guilt. Guilt never lasts. I ripped off my veil and stepped toward Damian. What's going on, Damian? She just wanted to see our wedding, so I sent her an invitation. Damian's lips twitched slightly, but he still positioned himself between me and Camila, blocking my view. Don't be mad, Solara. It was just a joke. Let's continue, okay? How did Camila even know we were getting married? Simple. Damian had never actually cut contact with her. I didn't feel sad. Instead, I felt a strange, long-awaited sense of relief. I placed my veil in Damian's hands and smiled. Go ahead. I'll let you have the venue. Chapter 06. A flicker of satisfaction flashed across Camila's eyes. The next second, she feigned innocence, her eyes welling up with tears as if I had bullied her. Miss Solara, Damian said he was worried the wedding would be too dull, so I just put up some old pictures to liven things up. She even added pitifully, I didn't know you'd get so mad. Solara, Damian's face turned pale. Camila isn't the kind of person you think she is. Don't joke about something as important as our wedding. I shot him a cold glance. Use that tiny brain of yours for a second. If I had put up intimate photos with another man at our wedding and called it a joke, would you have accepted it? Anyone who would do something like this is either an idiot or a scumbag. And you, before they realized what was happening. I grabbed Camila's hair in a tight grip. You're both. Do you have any idea how much effort I put into planning this wedding? You wretched. Ah, Camila's shriek rang through the hall as I slapped her hard across the face. Damian immediately pulled me away, his voice filled with shock. Solara, what are you doing? To everyone who knew me, I was always the calm one, so mild-mannered that I often seemed timid. They had never even seen me argue with someone, let alone hit them, but that was because no one had ever pushed me to my limit before. My heart was vast enough to tolerate countless offenses from people who didn't matter, but it was also small. Only a select few ever found a place in it. Now, there was one less. I smirked. And you? You're just as pathetic. With everyone's stunned gazes locked onto me, I walked up to the big screen and removed my engagement ring. Smiling brightly, I announced, "Congratulations to me, I'm officially single because my ex-fiancé and his secretary conspired to ruin my wedding. These two are a match made in heaven. Let's give them our best wishes." I clapped my hands. Scattered applause followed, mostly from my closest friends, their eyes red with emotion. I smiled at them, then casually tossed the engagement ring away. Gathering the train of my gown, I strode toward the exit. Solara! Damian scrambled to retrieve the ring. I never looked back. Each step I took was firm and unwavering. As I got into a taxi, the driver glanced at me through the rearview mirror and wordlessly handed me a pack of tissues. "Wipe your tears. Sweetheart, a man like that isn't worth it." Only then did I realize I was crying. I wiped my face and chuckled. These are happy tears. 4 years ago, I shattered the chains of my upbringing, walking away from my past. From that day forward, there was no more Brosi, only Solara. And today, I was walking away from yet another toxic relationship. The process hadn't been perfect, but the outcome was exactly as it should be. When Damian returned home, I was packing up the last of my things. Almost everything in the apartment belonged to him. I only took my clothes. He grabbed my suitcase, looking both confused and furious. "Where are you going? You already made a scene at the wedding, now you're running away from home too?" I met his gaze calmly. "Let go. Where will you even go? That's none of your concern. I've already rented a place." His eyes widened. "When?" "The day after my birthday." Without a moment's hesitation, right after he left me behind to spend the night at Camila's hospital bedside. That morning, I took time off work to view apartments. By noon, I had signed the lease. By the afternoon, I was back at work, finishing my tasks as usual. I never planned to tell Damian. Maybe, deep down, I had known that day would come sooner or later. Damian looked utterly lost, his expression a mix of hurt and disbelief. "Why?" I glanced around the apartment where we had lived for 3 years. Everything was familiar. The cozy living room, the spotless kitchen, the plush carpet, all had been carefully maintained. All had captured our moments of happiness, but none of it belonged to me anymore. "This place isn't mine." Damian's face darkened, his frustration boiling over as he punched the wall. "You're leaving me over a stupid joke? A joke? The moment your first instinct was to shield her, you used up your last chance." He still didn't understand. She's always been playful. Even back when we were studying abroad, she just wanted to lighten the mood. Yes, this time she went too far. "But if you don't want to see her again, I'll block her, okay?" Desperate, he pulled out his phone and opened his chat with Camila. I saw it, right up until the moment he walked into the apartment. They had been messaging. Realizing his mistake, he quickly deleted her contact and blocked her, making sure I saw him do it. Then he handed me the phone like a child seeking praise. "See? She's gone. I've cleaned everything up." I didn't take it. I just shook my head. "It doesn't matter anymore. Damian, maybe you didn't understand what I said at that ridiculous wedding. So I'll make it clear now. We're over." He flinched at my next words. "Luckily, we never registered our marriage." That was the final blow. His eyes turned red, and he clung to my suitcase, unwilling to let go. "Solara, isn't this our home? Are you really leaving me?" We were long distance for 4 years and never broke up. We promised we'd always be together. I was done arguing. I wrenched my suitcase free, but in doing so, I accidentally yanked his wrist, making his watch slip off and crash onto the floor. The black watch he always wore, the one that matched mine, scattered into broken pieces. Be a decent person. Damian, stop rubbing it in my face that you and Camila were already tangled up long before this. I've played the fool once. I won't do it again. His voice cracked. Do you hate me? No. I just have no expectations left for you. I don't know when you'll leave me behind again, when you'll see me as your enemy while you protect her. But more importantly, I tilted my head, lips curling into a mocking smile. Even if I imagine you doing it all over again, I don't feel a single ounce of sadness. He froze, and he understood. It meant that I no longer loved him. We were truly over. His grip loosened. Desperation flickered in his eyes. Chapter 07. I spent half a day tidying up my new apartment. The next morning, feeling refreshed, I threw myself into work. When I handed Gabriel a file, his eyes landed on my bare ring finger. He paused for a moment, then casually said, "There's an overseas assignment next month. Our department has 2 slots. I recommended you take some time to think about it." Overseas? The sudden news caught me off guard. When did you recommend me? Last week. Oh, he actually smiled, a rare, almost fatherly expression. Close the door on your way out. Thanks. As I shut the door, I felt like I was in a dream. It was the first time Gabriel had ever smiled at me, just when I thought he was destined to be a cold, emotionless boss. A while back, he had noticed my engagement ring for the first time. He hadn't said a word, just frowned, his eyes flickering with something like regret, as if he were silently thinking, what a waste of a good woman. Why would she do this to herself? From that day forward, he never smiled again. We had even secretly started calling him Mr. No Smile. Damian was the only unpleasant thing left in my otherwise peaceful life. He called me every day. I blocked one number after another. When he realized calls wouldn't work, he switched to long, heartfelt messages. I ignored him for days. And then, when his patience finally ran out, he showed up in person, standing outside my office building, cradling a massive bouquet of flowers as people passed by. Beaming, he extended his hand toward me. "Solara, I got the watch fixed." That watch, it was the cheapest thing Damian owned. I had bought it in my freshman year with money from my part-time job, the most expensive gift I had ever given. He wore it for 7 years. Once, a friend had laughed at him for wearing such a cheap watch. Damian had immediately darkened, saying, "This is the most valuable thing I own." That friend had been too scared to joke about it again. But this was also the same Damian who had worn my watch while taking care of Camila all night. I wondered, had he ever glanced at the time that night and thought about me, waiting alone at home? I curled my lips. "It has nothing to do with me. You have nothing to do with me." Then, without hesitation, I sped off on my scooter. Damian was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. His life had been smooth sailing. His biggest setbacks probably all came from me. Yet I never expected him to be so persistent. He even called in reinforcements. When I received Camila's text, I almost laughed in disbelief. The audacity. Still, I decided to meet her, just to see what kind of nonsense she was trying to pull this time. When we met, Camila put on her usual pitiful act. Damian asked me to come and explain our relationship. "Miss Solara, there really was nothing between us. Damian only hired me because we were old classmates. And now I've already resigned." The wedding. I admit I went too far with my joke. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong. If you're willing to forgive me, if you're willing to forgive Damian, I'll do whatever you ask." As she spoke, she even started sobbing. A beautiful woman in tears. Damian would probably be devastated to see this. But me? I felt nothing. "Oh really?" I tilted my head. "Even if I ask you to kneel?" Camila stiffened. After a long pause, she put on a brave face and said, "If it means you'll forgive Damian, then I will." Then, from her phone, which was lying on the table, Damian's voice cut in. "Solara, enough. Do you really have to be this aggressive?" At the same time, Camila's eyes flickered with triumph. "Ah, so this was a setup." I crossed my arms. "She's the one who said she'd do anything. I just gave her a condition. Why are you getting upset? If you weren't serious, why bother calling me out here?" Camila's expression twisted. but she quickly put on an urgent, self-sacrificing tone. Please, don't fight because of me. I'll do it. I'll kneel. And with that, she hung up on Damian. Chapter 08. I clicked my tongue in amusement. Camila smirked triumphantly. I won. Damian still can't let me go. I frowned, genuinely puzzled. Why would I compete with you over a man I don't even want? All my life, I had competed in academics, hard work, degrees, and resumes. I had never fought over trash. Camila's face darkened. You're just bitter because you can't have him. I chuckled. If Damian was so unwilling to let you go, then why did he make you leave the company? To my surprise, her mood lifted. Oh, he didn't tell you? He knew I loved fashion design, so he opened a studio for me. My heart sank. No wonder she was smiling. She was sitting across from a fool who wouldn't be amused. Camila's voice dripped with condescension. And did you really believe we were just friends? You remember the night of the shooting at his university? When you were desperately calling him? Do you know what we were doing? We were having a very fun time. I told him not to pick up, and he didn't. And wasn't that the same night your parents ambushed you at school for money? They even planned to kidnap you, didn't they? You should be thanking me. If I hadn't made Damian so happy that night, he wouldn't have felt guilty enough to rush back after skiing with me, just in time to save you. She batted her eyelashes. How sad. Even your own family doesn't love you. Disgusting. Absolutely revolting. That was my junior year of college. After what happened with my parents, I had finally made up my mind. I took the household registration booklet I had fought to obtain, and for the first time in 21 years, I erased the name that had never carried an ounce of love. I became Solara. Solara, the son of my own spring. Damian had been by my side. He had encouraged me, supported me, assured me that I wasn't alone. And now, I realized that all this so-called unconditional support had been laced with guilt over his betrayal. My fists clenched, bile rising in my throat. You two are disgusting. She scoffed. And what right do you have to judge us? Damian was overseas for so long, he was always the one flying back to see you. Did you ever once go to him? You knew he struggled with his coursework, faced racial discrimination, was even mugged. Camila's voice grew angrier, as if I had committed some unforgivable crime. Whenever he had a hard time, I was there for him. What did you ever do? You couldn't even buy a plane ticket. All you ever did was take his love. My gaze shifted to the corner of the cafe, where Damian sat silently, absorbing every word. How about you, Damian? I asked softly. Is that what you think too? Camila followed my gaze, her face draining of color. Damian stumbled toward us, trembling. He wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. I tilted my head. I only ever took from you. I never did anything for you. The nights I spent watching online lectures, painstakingly summarizing them into simple notes just so he could pass his courses. The hours I poured into researching and writing an entire paper on combating racial discrimination because I wasn't there to protect him, but I wanted to help in the only way I could. The times I stayed up late revising his thesis, breaking down the complex sections, restructuring his arguments when he was too stuck to think, and all of that, in his mind, amounted to nothing. I studied him as if seeing him for the first time. Damian, you're filthy. You don't deserve me. I never had a visa. I had never even been on a plane. The places he went, I had only ever seen in books. At the start of our long-distance relationship, I had been deeply insecure, but he had reassured me. No distance can change my love for you. Damian will always love Solara. By his 3rd year abroad, that promise had already expired. Turns out, promises are only valid while love lasts. After that, they're just empty words. I sneered. You two belong together. Keep your mess between yourselves. Why drag me into it? Do you really think if you had just told me you didn't want long distance, that you didn't love me anymore, I would have clung to you? You seriously overestimated yourself and underestimated me. If you had just admitted that you couldn't resist sleeping with this trash, I would have just called a cab and left. I turned on my heel and walked away. I didn't even want to look at them for another second. That night, I called Gabriel and accepted the overseas assignment. 1. It was an excellent career opportunity. 2. Damian and Camila had polluted the air of the city. I needed to breathe fresh air somewhere else. While I was busy preparing my visa, a friend who had attended my wedding told me that Damian and Camila were at each other's throats. Apparently, Damian was demanding that she return the 1 million yuan he had invested in her studio and was threatening to sue. Camila, of course, didn't have the money. She threw tantrums, cried, and even threatened to harm herself. Logically, her family had enough wealth to support her studies abroad. I asked my friend, then why is she broke? That's when I learned the truth. Camila's tuition? Paid for by her ex-boyfriend. Her ex had been wealthy and generous, never caring about the money until just before their wedding. When he discovered that, during their university years, Camila had been cheating on him with Damian, without hesitation, he cut her off entirely. She lost her financial safety net and couldn't even find a job overseas. And so, she went crawling back to Damian. My friend sighed. Damian got scammed. I scoffed. What? Is he a toddler? It was consensual. If we're playing the blame game, Camila deserves 30 hits. But Damian? He deserves 70 and then some. Stop acting like some innocent boy who was tricked by a manipulative woman. I told my friend, thanks for telling me, but from now on, I don't want to hear anything about them. I don't care. Yet, only a few days later, I still heard the news. Damian really did sue Camila. She couldn't pay back the money, and just like that, she became blacklisted as a debtor. Chapter 09. A few days later, my visa finally arrived. Before I left, I received a call from one of Damian's friends. Sis, you need to come to the hospital. Damian has alcohol poisoning. He's in the ER. He claimed that ever since our breakup, Damian had been drinking like water. I hung up and muttered to myself, don't believe rumors. Don't spread rumors. The next day, Damian, completely fine, called me from his friend's phone. Solara, I'm in the hospital. Didn't you say you'd bring me food every day if I was ever hospitalized? I really want your porridge. I love anything you cook. When are you coming? I miss you so much. I thought I'd wake up and see you. His voice was gentle, affectionate, filled with longing. I cut him off. Stop playing dumb. Damian, promises don't count once they've expired. Silence. Then, in a choked voice, he asked, so you'll never forgive me? You destroyed my belief in love. I sighed. And besides, I'm leaving. An airport announcement chimed in the background, urging passengers to proceed to their gates. There was a sudden commotion on Damian's end, followed by his panicked breathing. Solara, where are you going? I hummed. Even country girls get their turn to go abroad. Then, I hung up. I removed my SIM card, and I boarded my flight. A new chapter of my life began. When I first arrived, I was overwhelmed, busy adapting to the environment, adjusting to my new job. 2 weeks in, I settled into the rhythm and reconnected with my colleagues back home, catching up on office gossip. One day, my coworker messaged me. Gabriel got into a fight during lunch. I was stunned. With who? Gabriel? Fighting? I couldn't imagine it. Every day, he showed up with neatly combed hair and perfectly pressed suits. Whenever he encountered a tough problem, he would instinctively frown, adjust his thin-framed glasses, and methodically solve it, more like a university professor than a corporate manager. And now, suddenly, he was fighting? The contrast was too much. My coworker inhaled sharply. Your ex. I almost dropped my phone. What? They seemed to know each other. During the fight, your ex yelled at him for stealing you, and Gabriel shouted back, you don't deserve her. She paused dramatically, then asked excitedly, was he talking about you? I scoffed. You're crazy. She laughed nervously. Yeah. I mean, it's not like he ever gave off those vibes. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. Gabriel fought Damian? I shivered. Most likely, he just hated Damian. Honestly, who wouldn't? I ended up staying abroad for 2 years. Then, on the same day, I received 2 emails, one notifying me of my transfer back home, the other congratulating me on my promotion. When I returned, I finally had an office of my own. I ran my fingers over the sleek leather chair and dreamed big. 3 years to become a general manager. 5 years to reach CEO. Then, marry rich and powerful. I was halfway through crafting my grand master plan when a knock interrupted my thoughts. I cleared my throat and called out, "Come in." Gabriel stepped inside, uncharacteristically. He smiled. "Long time no see. Today's afternoon tea is milk tea." 6 years after graduation, I bought my own 2-bedroom apartment. As I stepped out of the real estate office, I spotted a tiny kitten sitting by the entrance. Its little tail curled high as it mewed loudly, its voice sharp and thin. Barely 2 months old, its damp fur clung to its fragile frame, pale yellow, scrawny, shivering. My heart ached. I knelt down, gently drying its fur with tissues, and stayed with it for 2 hours, hoping its mother would return. She never did. I stretched out my hand and whispered, "Do you want to come home with me?" Then, a miracle. The kitten meowed and crawled toward me, tail held high, tiny head wobbling. It flopped onto my shoe, batting at my shoelace. My heart melted into a puddle, wrapping it in my jacket. I cradled it close and stroked its little nose. "You don't have a mom or dad. Neither do I. From now on, let's keep each other company."